And we're just going to go right into the panel. And today we have a really excellent panel of partners. You've heard a lot about our work in the preserve. They're going to share with you their experiences with their organizations, working with the Conservancy, and what these partnerships mean, to the work outside of the preserve, and why these types of partnerships are so important. So I'm going to turn it back to Doug Jensen, who's going to be emceeing the panel, and go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. We're going to introduce our panelists. First, we have Chally Facemire, who's the program director for the Central Arizona Conservation Alliance. And she leads their effort to facilitate collaboration among the Alliance partners, as well as implementation of the regional open space strategy. She comes from an interdisciplinary research background studying landscape scale land management, environmental and natural resource law and policy, physical and legal boundary impacts on ecosystems, and collaborative conservation. Our next panelist is Kathy Gerst. She's the Conservation Research Coordinator for the Bat Conservation International and Southwest Bat Hub Coordinator of the North American Bat Monitoring Program. Kathy is an ecologist who cultivates strong partnerships across science and management applications in the Southwest. She aims to bring together stakeholders, researchers, and agencies. She enthusiastically promotes the use of standardized monitoring protocols and data accessibility. She received her PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology from the University of Arizona in 2011. Over the past 20 years, her work and interests have led her to carry out field research across mountains, deserts, and tropical forests. Our next panelist is Seth Munson, who is a research ecologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. Seth is an ecologist with the Southwest Biological Science Center and Flagstaff. His research focuses on plant-soil interactions in dryland ecosystems and how these interactions are affected by climate and land use changes. Much of Dr. Munson's research aims to understand the dynamics of dryland ecosystems along temporal and broad spatial scales and employs a multidisciplinary approach. His work seeks to improve the management of arid and semi-arid lands, including determining effective ecological restoration strategies, and is done in close collaboration with several land management agencies. Next, we have Aaron Posthumus, who is the outreach coordinator for the National Phenology Network. It is a national science initiative based at the University of Arizona. The National Phenology Network focuses on collecting, organizing, and delivering phenological data, information, and forecasts to support natural resource management and decision-making to advance the scientific field of phenology and to promote understanding of phenology by a wide range of audiences. Aaron has a background in wildlife conservation and management and has worked for the National Phenology Network since 2010. One of her favorite parts of work is supporting local phenology programs, such as that in our conservancy. We then have Ron Rutowski, Arizona State University Emeritus Professor and President of the Central Arizona Butterfly Association. Ron got his PhD at Cornell University. I'm having a little problem here. Sorry. Ron got his PhD at Cornell University and joined the faculty in life sciences at ASU in 1976. His primary teaching responsibilities were in invertebrate zoology and animal behavior. His research focused on production, function, and perception of bright coloration in animals, especially butterflies. This work has been done on multiple continents and yielded over 100 publications and scientific literature. He retired from full-time faculty responsibilities in 2016 but has remained active in teaching and research in the life sciences in a number of ways, including providing scientific guidance and participation in butterfly counts in central Arizona, such as those done in the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve. And then I'm not certain if Vicki is with us.
I'm here.
Good. Vicki Olmsted is the Senior Environmental Specialist for Wildlife Management on the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. She has been in her position for almost 2 years, and before that, she was a wildlife biologist for the United States Department of Agriculture Wildlife Services in New York City. She has held a variety of wildlife positions in 11 different states, focusing on population demography and conservation management of threatened and endangered species, as well as habitat management and restoration. She has a BS in wildlife conservation from the University of Delaware and a Master in Science in Wildlife Biology from Arkansas Tech University. So we're going to have the opportunity to ask a number of questions of our panelists. To start this off, I will ask one fairly broad question, and then we will open it up for questions from our audience through the chat room. So the question I have for each of you, and I assume that we would just take this in the order in which you were introduced, would you each briefly, in 2 or 3 minutes, describe the work you do with your organization and how your collaboration with the Parsons Field Institute relates to your research interests? So, Charlie?
Yeah, so as Doug said, I run the Central Arizona Conservation Alliance. And so the Central Arizona Conservation Alliance is a convener of partner organizations to tackle large-scale projects focused on conservation and ecosystem restoration and a lot of other things under that umbrella within the larger Maricopa County area. And the McDowell-Sonoran Conservancy is not only a critical partner for us, but is actually one of our steering committee members and helps guide our direction and also our working groups, particularly the Desert Defenders, as you heard was talked about in the prior presentation. And we have Mary Fastigi sit on our Sonoran Seed Collaborative, and in our Urban Desertscape Restoration group, where we are focusing on reaching out to neighborhoods to try to increase desert ecosystems and help people remove turf and save water in the effort to help then lead out to the preserves, so we have less of a hard boundary and help also remove some of those invasive species. And sorry, I have a note. And the McDowell-Sonoran Conservancy was also critical for developing our regional open space strategy, which is our guidance document and contains our 4 main goals of protect and connect, which is all about protecting habitat and migration corridors, which they are also helping with developing a future work group. I've been speaking with Jesse about a project there, and then also about future work. Sustain and Restore, which is where Desert Defenders falls under, Love and Support, which is all about education and outreach, and Coordinate and Elevate, which is all about working together to further our reach and impact.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Kathy?
Thank you so much for having me on this panel. As you mentioned, I work for Bat Conservation International, but I'm based in Tucson, where I help facilitate and coordinate participation throughout the Southwest, mainly Arizona and New Mexico, in the North American Bat Monitoring Program. This is a multi-agency, multinational long-term monitoring program with a goal to assess the status and trends of North American bats. And so this is a program that tries to improve the state of conservation science for bats through standardized protocols, a unified sampling design, and integrated data analysis. And so people all over the continent are collecting data on bat population dynamics and bat occupancy in order to create regular status and trends of North American bats. This Southwest hub was established in 2001 with a mission to support this monitoring through collaboration and partnerships. And McDowell Sonoran Conservancy is one of our favorite partners. I've been working with Debbie and Jesse for the last couple of years to facilitate your participation in this program. And the program not only helps collect data and manage a database to do large scale analyses of bat species ranges, but also helps folks manage and conserve bats where they are living and working as well. And so because bat acoustic data is relatively easy to collect, but relatively difficult to process and analyze, we have a program where we lend out equipment and process data for our partners, such as yourselves, and create, upload that data into the database and create informative reports to help you understand and know what species of bats are found on your property.
Thank you, Kathy. So Seth, what can you tell us about the U.S. Geological Survey take on our activities today?
Yeah, thank you, Doug, and thank you for the invitation to talk to you all today. I work for the Department of the Interior, and so USGS is the science branch providing science to National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Land Management, and others. But in that other category, we do a lot of work with our non-Department of Interior partners that are after similar goals. And so the Conservancy works to really conserve and enhance the biodiversity and production of the Sonoran Desert ecosystem. And that's, what a lot of our land management partners are interested in doing that as well. So through interaction with Dr. Helen Rowe, who you've heard from today, I found out about several restoration projects that the Conservancy was engaged in. At the time, we were developing RestoreNet, which is basically it's a systematic way of testing different restoration techniques across a number of sites. So we have about 30 sites across the Southwest, including in the Chihuahuan Desert, Mojave Desert, and the Colorado Plateau. Of course, your site at the Conservancy is in the Sonoran Desert. And really the goal here is to come up with best strategies to recover degraded areas. So our site at the Conservancy is at the Granite Mountain Trailhead, where there's been a lot of heavy recreational use. Maybe some of you have participated in the data collection. We rely a lot on you all and our partners because we have 30 sites. We can't do it all ourselves. And we use that information to come up with best practices that can be put forward to use in other areas. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Seth. And Erin, we'd like to hear from you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll start out with just a little bit of background on the USA National Phenology Network, which is based here at the University of Arizona in Tucson. So the USA NPN was established back in 2007 because there wasn't really a standardized way to collect information about phenology. And phenology has many different applications. We can use it to understand aspects of ecology, things like mismatch between plants and pollinators. It's also useful in working on invasive species, knowing the best time to treat, and even things like recreation, knowing about when to tell people to go out and look for wildflowers. So we created the NPN to be this standardized way of collecting data, and we set up the Nature's Notebook platform, which is the way that we do that data collection. But it does require on crowdsourcing that kind of data collection. So we have kind of two kinds of observers. We have what we call our backyard observers, and then our local phenology program observers. And so the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy was one of the early adopters of our local phenology program model. We're really trying to empower groups like yours to answer your own questions that you might have about phenology. So trying to understand, local species changes, whether climate change might be impacting the species that you care about, whether, connections between two different species might be shifting. So I can say that the data set that you all have collected is really amazing. It's one of our long-term data sets. You have 8 years of data collection now at the same sites, which is really valuable. Tracking the same plants over time can really help us understand the differences between how species might react to different weather situations. So whether it's been a really wet winter, does that impact what's happening with the phenology in the spring? Does the increase in temperatures have an impact? So the information that you're collecting year after year is really important for helping us understand that. And there's also connections to some kind of research-driven questions that you all are helping to answer as well. There's connections to work we're doing with the lesser long-nosed bat, helping to understand by tracking saguaro, when flowering might be available, nectar might be available for bats. Also other pollinators like white-winged doves. You're collecting data on both white-winged doves and saguaro flowering, which is a really great way to understand the connection between those two species. And then just generally understanding information about Southwest phenology is really valuable as well. It's kind of strange what happens here with, you get a little bit of rainfall and then things start leafing out or blooming. It's really different than in other parts of the country where we're working. So it's really valuable to have that data set of Southwest phenology.
Thank you very much. And Ron, we'd like to hear from you. You're muted at the moment.
No, we can't hear you, Ron.
Now you should be able to. Hear me.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Well, as we've seen today, one of the missions and goals of the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy and the Parson Field Institute is the gathering scientific information about the resources, the biological resources and geological and other resources on the preserve. And of course, it's impossible to build something really large enough to do all that with the resources available. So reasonably, the Conservancy reaches out to other organizations with which to partner to gain expertise. And I represent a huge institution, which is ASU, which has a huge array of, a huge variety of expertise and a lot of people willing to do it and a lot of interest in doing as what the ASU mission statement says, enhancing our local impact and social embeddedness. So it's at the junction of those sort of two goals that the partnership of ASU and the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy arises. And it's played out in a whole variety of ways. At the top end, one of our vice presidents, Peter Schlosser, who's a professor in the School of Sustainability in the College of Global Futures, is on the board of the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy and provides ASU perspective and involvement with the community through those activities. The Conservancy has also provided a lot of learning opportunities for a number of ASU undergraduate and graduate students. We saw that today with Bradley's presentation on the analysis that's ongoing of the butterflies. And also there are a large number of faculty and staff who at ASU who buy into this idea of enhancing our local impact and societal embeddedness and are keen to offer their expertise in a variety of contexts. So Jennifer Broach, we saw that Bradley has come out of her lab out at ASU West. I know that Heather Bateman, another faculty member, have been involved with the McDowell Sonoran Preserve and the Field Institute in a large number of ways, doing research on restoration, monitoring, all the stuff we've been hearing about today. Just for a minute to speak about what I've been involved with. I initially partnered as a faculty member at ASU with the Conservancy in 2011 to help with a study of documenting the diversity of large day-flying insects on the preserve. That went on for about 3 years. It was sort of an outgrowth of my research program on insect mating systems, where population biology becomes an important determinant of the particular mating system structure that we find in a species. After about 3 years, the emphasis changed from assessing the biodiversity on the preserve, as we've heard today, to monitoring the populations that are there for both management and, as I always say, educational purposes as well. I'd been involved with butterfly counts in Central Arizona since 2007. So I became a sort of scientific advisor and participant in butterfly counts that the Parson Field Institute wanted to run as part of their monitoring program. The first fall count was run in 2014 and has now gone on for 9 years. In 2017, the program was expanded to include spring counts. And so that's been going on now for about 7 years. And we've learned a lot about how butterfly abundance and diversity on the preserve changes over time. But we continue to learn more with each passing count. And we've heard something about some of the results today from Bradley. So it hasn't been a direct outgrowth of my research program, but it's been a set of opportunities and experiences that that have grown out of my partnership and ASU's partnership with the Conservancy that I've greatly valued.
Thank you, Ron. And Vicki, we enjoy hearing from you.
Well, I'm the wildlife biologist for Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. As Doug said, I've been in my position for about 2 years, and one of my key goals for the position is to inventory all wildlife that occurs within the tribal boundaries, which is not a small undertaking. And I am just one person. In my time with the community, I've started avian surveys and things of that sort, and we're moving forward. And one of the biggest things that I've gained from McDowell Sonora Conservancy is actually being able to pick Mary and Jesse's brains, because they've helped me kind of come up aware of some of the research they've done and use that in my planning for how I'm going to be inventorying 52,000 acres of land as I continue my process.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, we have approximately 15 to 20 minutes to entertain questions. Lars is on top of our chat room. Do we have questions, Lars, that have been posed?
I don't see any quite yet. So everyone,
Okay.
Please feel free.
Well, Vicki, your work with the Native American community in the local area is fascinating. Could you tell us a little about their major wildlife concerns within that community?
Well, one of the major things is we don't know what we have, so we can't really make any decisions on what we need or what is major concerns, other than, of course, anything that is tribally significant would have major concerns for ensuring that the habitat maintains. As with everywhere in the valley, you have concerns about invasive species, because I'm also the invasive species biologist for the tribe. So I'm wearing quite a few hats. So we're focused on removing, salt cedar, and we've recently put out a pamphlet within the community for stink net removal to help the community kind of control that. At least community members in their own yards can start to control that, as we plan to expand our efforts to areas that are already disturbed and already covered in stink net. And then so we started avian surveys, and we've been keeping an eye on what kind of avian species we have. But as anybody who works with wildlife knows, you can't really just decide on 1 year what you need to be doing for the future. It takes a few years of baseline data to really make a decision on what we need to be restoring or what we need to be paying attention to. So we do some river restoration, we do some invasive species removals, and we focus on that as of now.
Well, thank you very much. And Kathy, your work with bats, as everyone knows, have very much been in the news in the past few days. And I'm wondering what you view as the most important implications of your research going into the
Sure.
future?
So we are here in Arizona, are in really the hotspot of bat diversity in the United States, and yet we have very little long-term data on what species of bats are found where. We have 28 species of bats in Arizona, which is a lot, but we really don't know much about their seasonality, their ranges, and we need that baseline information to say, know how white nose syndrome is going to impact them, to know how wind energy is going to impact them. We do have the migratory species here, as well as climate change and other impacts to bats. And so a lot of what we're doing is doing sort of a large scale assessment of just knowing who is found where. And so just getting these inventories, now that we have the technology developed to get inventories of bat diversity all throughout different habitats, different spatial locations, is really a major innovation for a species that, a group of species that are historically, we just know very little about their ecology and distribution. And so one thing I didn't mention is the reason acoustic surveying of bats is really cool and really useful is that because individual species of bats have very distinct echolocation calls. And so what we're doing when we're making these acoustic surveys is we're able to determine what species are present in an area by looking at sort of the shape of their calls, the frequency of their calls, the nature of their calls. So there's some really neat sort of recent technology that's made this feasible.
All right, thank you.
We are starting to get a couple questions if you want me to.
Wonderful. Go
Okay.
ahead with those, Lars.
So this is actually to the panel, so everyone can respond, but it's besides invasives, what does the panel see as major opportunities for regional collaborative efforts, studies, etc.? Anyone want to go first? Get there.
I can go first. So I would say that there's a lot of opportunities, but some of the biggest ones aside from invasives are protecting these habitat areas and, gathering this data at the same time. And a lot of the work that McDowell Sonoran Conservancy is doing is great work, and we can take that and help other groups to kind of extrapolate lessons learned and to spread it around not only the valley, but different parts of Arizona, so we can start working on this as a whole ecosystem.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wanted to contribute on that one?
Sure, I can share a project that we've been working on with the Conservancy local phenology program. So we have many different local phenology programs across the country. We have over 200 that participate every year. And a lot of times there's a limited capacity to actually sit down and look at the data that they have so far. They often have questions that they're trying to answer, but it's just hard to get to the point of being able to answer those questions, even if they have a great long-term data set. So we started last year a process to try to empower our local phenology programs to answer their own questions with data analysis guidance. So we've been working with several members of the Conservancy to look at what they have so far and figure out, what are the questions that you're trying to answer. And then it's really helped kind of inform the process that we're creating this year to put together a series of learning modules online that will help them to actually go through that process of figuring out what tests should I run, how do I interpret the results, and then write those up into summaries. So it's an exciting project, and we really value the input from this group because that'll end up helping with all these other groups across the country that are trying to do the same thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron.
I
Anyone
have
else?
I have one thing I would like to contribute, which is that it'd be interesting, the monitoring programs across the preserve and in connection with the other groups that are represented here to integrate across the monitoring programs. Like one, at least being interested in butterflies, I always thought would be interesting if there could somehow be more integrated activity or a comparison of data sets between the plant phenology program and the butterflies, because the butterflies obviously rely on the plants. Similarly, the ground dwelling arthropods, you know, they're arthropods like the butterflies. Are we seeing similar sorts of variation in abundance and diversity with precipitation like we're finding in the butterflies? So just looking across from the different monitoring programs, I think would be really interesting and productive.
I'm gonna mention something that's more of the near future because wildlife corridors are kind of a major thing at this point. You know, all the grants are going out, and that's one of the things that the monitoring program that is going on at McDowell Sonoran Preserve helps with, because you have, you know, the McDowell Mountains right there, and you have tribal lands close by that also have preserve lands. So that's a good connection and corridor kind of research that can continue into the future, and it can also connect all the way down into the Tonto, which is, you know, way far, but actually pretty regionally wide scale. And when you're looking at that in the grand scheme of wildlife movement.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki. I can move on unless anyone else to contribute on that one. Another one was, I'm not sure of the specifics on this, but it's what data gaps do the panelists see that the Conservancy can contribute to going into the future? If there's any ideas that you've seen out of today's presentations. All right, I'm not sure if that person wants to maybe get a little bit more specific, that would be great. But the next one is what are the key elements of practical monitoring into the future, given limited resources and the need to translate monitoring into action when possible?
You
Can
know,
you
I
repeat
think,
that?
Go ahead and repeat it, Lars.
Okay, it's what are the key elements of practical monitoring into the future, given limited resources and the need to translate monitoring into action when possible?
I'll piggyback a thought on that. As citizen scientists, our work might be relevant to this question. I'm wondering to what extent citizen scientists and other volunteers have proved fundamental to the work you're doing.
Well, of course, that's completely true, as you well know, Doug, for the butterfly counts. I mean, and that's one of the fantastic stewards and the training programs and all of that make these butterfly counts done the way we do them possible. It's a critical element to the success of the butterfly monitoring program.
I would say what you are doing already by partnering with other organizations that maybe have capacity that you don't, say like the NPN or NABAT, or, you know, I think we heard about quite a few who can take your data and translate it into products that are, and put it in the context of other data is really valuable, rather than collecting data with, you know, a unique set of protocols that might not translate or be able to be combined with other data sets. I think that's a really great thing that's already happening.
I also would like to jump in and say that, you know, the community scientists are absolutely integral to programs like the Desert Defenders. It wouldn't function anywhere near as well as it does without people like the stewards at the Conservancy.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I'm not seeing any additional, Doug, if you got a couple other questions.
Well, I'm curious, Seth, regarding your work. We've had some preliminary results through our degraded lands studies here in the preserve. I'm wondering on a broad scale if you're seeing significant trends in restoration research as to what might work best throughout the West.
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to piggyback on the last question, I mean, a lot of the power in doing this and your involvement is that it has a regional significance. And so because it's a network, we can kind of pinpoint, where restoration strategies work and where they don't. And so I think it's, absolutely essential to have partners like you involved in this work. With respect to patterns, we're seeing more broadly these small pits or depressions is really a borrowed technique from Native American culture, Zuni waffle gardens and other tribes, where if you just create this small depression, you can retain water, and it really across the board bolsters germination success and seedling success. So that's one of the strategies we saw that just across the board is a great technique. And other things are more nuanced. Some things require, or some sites required a certain, seed mix to take off, or responded more to some of the other treatments we're doing. So again, contributing to this is really helping us understand what works across really the whole Southwest. There's a lot of places we don't have information, but we really appreciate the fact that this project involves partners like you that can help us collect data.
Well, I have one last question, Aaron, that I would like to pose to you. In your work with phenology, I'm wondering what phenological associations are you finding to be of most interest and most significance in the Southwest? Are you noticing patterns that we should be concerned about or that are most notable?
Yeah, so we are really interested in what's happening with keystone species like saguaros. You all probably have recognized that the flowering just in the last couple of years has been really variable. We had a really low bloom year last year. This year seems like it's really great. There's a lot of flowers, and that was the same thing 2 years ago. So there's a lot of variability that happens. So having a long-term data set where, like you all are collecting, where you have the same saguaro or multiple saguaros and you're looking at those same plants year after year, that really helps us to understand what's going on with those plants. We're also really interested in the impact of drought as well, and looking at, you have a diversity of species that you're tracking, from cactus to mesquites and some shrubs as well. And being able to look at that over the long term is really useful as well. And because you're collecting data through the standardized protocol that we have in Nature's Notebook, it allows us to also compare data to other parts of the state and even beyond. So being able to see what's going on at your locations versus others is really valuable as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just want to express my appreciation to you and your organizations for the work you're doing, and for the opportunity for us as the Field Institute and citizen scientists to collaborate with you.